Alright, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the channel, and today we're going to actually be doing an update video that I didn't necessarily expect to make yesterday. I made a video talking about the situation in Poland. I don't know if you guys hadn't heard. It's been pretty big news. It's been trending all over Twitter. Pretty much every outlet that writes news has talked about this in some way, but there was a missile that crossed the Ukrainian border yesterday, and it went to a village that was about 7 miles away from the border, and it actually hit an area where grain was drying out, and it killed 2 Polish. Which is, I think, pretty serious, right? Like, everyone agrees that 2 people died here. That should be taken somewhat seriously. That should always be considered. You know, there was loss of life, and it was innocent people. But the initial story was that it was expected to be a Russian missile, and they thought that, because at the time, you gotta think, Russia was bombarding Ukraine with dozens of missile strikes. They were targeting civilian infrastructure, including, like, electricity grids and whatnot, and they were just striking them with missiles, and all of a sudden, you know, this explosion happens in Poland right at the border. So everyone reported and expected for it to be Russia, and even Ukraine came out and said it was Russia. And of course, like, this was scary news. Everyone was kind of worried, I feel like. I mean, of course, people were memeing the situation. Let's not get that part wrong. But I think everyone was like, you know, oh shit, like World War III is about to start. When is Article 5 getting called up? Because Poland might really want NATO to come kick their ass for this one, right? Like, we were all scared, at least I was. But of course, now there's more information available, and we're going to go ahead and cover that because I want to update this situation. I don't want to, you know, just leave a video up that was, you know, basically pushing a narrative that ended up not being the truth without providing some sort of update to that. I don't feel like spreading that kind of thing. That's just not cool. So I wanted to make an update video and give you guys the story that we know now. There's a lot of new information here, so let's go ahead and get into this story. Polish and NATO officials agree that a missile that struck Poland, killing 2, was not fired by Russia. According to Polish President Andrzej Duda, quote, "From the information that we and our allies have, it was an S-300 rocket made in the Soviet Union, an old rocket, and there is no evidence that it was launched by the Russian side. Though the missile was not fired by Russia, NATO was quick to still blame Russia for the attack, stating that Russia started the war in the first place and this wouldn't have happened otherwise. Quote, "This is not Ukraine's fault. Russia bears ultimate responsibility as it continues its illegal war against Ukraine," NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said. Russia continued their attacks on Ukraine with a devastating missile barrage around the same time that the explosion in Poland happened. Cities across Ukraine were struck potentially with dozens of Russian missiles, creating widespread power outages and damage to civilian infrastructure. Ukraine claims most of the incoming Russian missiles were shot down by Ukrainian air defenses, but also claims that Russia fired the largest amount of missiles in the war so far. Yet, when believed to be a potential Russian missile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky quickly took to Twitter saying the following, quote, "Had a call with Polish President at Andrzej Duda, expressed condolences over the death of Polish citizens from Russian missile terror. We exchanged available information and are clarifying all the facts. Ukrainian and Polish and all of Europe and the world must be fully protected from terrorist Russia." Ukraine has yet to comment on the potential that the missile was Ukrainian in origin. The United States was initially somewhat reserved and was not quick to jump to conclusions, with US President Joe Biden saying the missile being Russian was, quote, "unlikely" during his visit to the G20 summit in Indonesia. Russia denied responsibility for the missile, calling statements accusing them, quote, "baseless" and, quote, "provocations." So this story has definitely significantly changed. At first, pretty much everyone, I feel like, thought that this was a Russian missile. That's what was being initially reported by Polish media, by international media. There was, of course, the security meeting in Poland over a crisis situation. People were worried, of course, that there was going to be, like, Article 5 brought up by NATO, which, if you don't know what Article 5 is, basically it states in their doctrine that an attack against one NATO country is an attack on all. And what this does is it pretty much pulls all of the NATO countries into a conflict if a nation's attacked. So Poland could have just called up Article 5 and said, "Hey, Russia attacked us, we're declaring Article 5 or whatever." The next thing you know, like, the United States, England, France, all these other countries in NATO, right, would have basically had to join the Ukraine conflict on the side of Poland. So it was, like, very close potentially to starting World War III. Like, if this turned out to be a Russian missile, it very well could have legitimately started World World War III. I think like we were very close, TBH. Like it's scary to say, and like I understand that's worrisome to hear, but I mean, that could have genuinely started World War III if that was the case. But now we know that the missile was likely fired from the Ukrainian side, right? So I think this kind of changes everything. So I don't know if this is going to be the controversial opinion that I think it could be, depending on how I word this, but I feel like both Ukraine and Russia should be held responsible for this happening. Now, a lot of the international response so far has been still blaming Russia. I mean, you guys started this war in the first place. It's your conflict, and this is a byproduct of that. It's a result of it, right? Therefore, it's Russia's fault. I still think Ukraine should be held somewhat liable for this, though, because, I mean, at the end of the day, if this is a Ukrainian missile, they still killed 2 people, and they were innocent people that aren't involved in the conflict at all. Under no circumstances whatsoever is it acceptable for a country, I personally feel like, to kill another country's civilians in a missile attack. Even if you're trying to defend yourself from missiles, like, you gotta be careful enough that, like, you're not killing other people's, like, countrymen, you know? That's just how I feel. Now, at the end of the day, though, I still also blame Russia. Because, yes, at the end of the day, this is Russia's war. They invaded their fucking neighbor. At the end of the day, Ukraine is defending itself from an unjust invasion, and that would have never have happened if there was never an invasion in the first place. And Russia can tiptoe around and say, oh, that wasn't us, you know, that wasn't us, but as a result of their actions, that happened. So I think both sides are really in the wrong in this one. Like, I think they both share some responsibility for how this all went down. But I find it really interesting, honestly, how the Ukrainian president responded. Like, yeah, he was so quick to call Russia terrorists and, like, demand that the world be fully protected from them. And he was, like, egging the situation on, essentially. And then, of course, when the tables turned a little bit, the tide flipped around on him, and it was Ukraine who's potentially responsible. He hasn't really had anything to say. He hasn't rushed to Twitter to make an update on that one and say, oh, sorry about that, guys, we fucking blew 2 of your guys up. No response whatsoever in that term, right? Which I think is pretty disrespectful, you know what I mean? Like, you killed 2 people, well, not you directly, but like, your military kills 2 people and you can't address that. Like, I feel like that's just disrespectful to the people who died. Like, at the end of the day, these were still human beings, and they were innocent human beings at that. You know, they're living their own lives in an independent country, not even involved. I mean, it's hard to say Poland's not involved because they are in support of Ukraine, and they've been supplying military goods and stuff too. Them with NATO, they've stood pretty much behind Ukraine in a lot of ways, but these people aren't like directly involved, you know what I mean? And at the end of the day, I don't want people to forget, like, these are actual human beings. Like, regardless of who you want to blame, 2 people died. And they never get to come back, they never get to finish their lives, they never get to experience the things that they were meant to experience, all because of what appears to be a misfire in a war in a different country, right? So, at the end of the day, I don't want that to be forgotten. Like, it is a serious situation, and as much of a surprise as it is to me personally that Russia's not responsible, given the carelessness they've shown in Ukraine and the just blatant fuck up that their entire invasion has really been, I mean, yeah, it surprises me that they're not responsible, but another thing I want to also mention is I'm not really enjoying how the mainstream media is spinning this situation. Like, I can't remember which, like, headline it was from who, but I saw an article earlier where it said, in the tweet, it said a Russian-made missile because it was made in the Soviet Union, right? These S-300s are manufactured Soviet-era technology, so technically it's Russian-made, quote-unquote, but it's just as much Ukrainian-made as it is Russian-made. But you see the mainstream media say a Russian-made missile hit Poland. They don't say Ukraine potentially misfired and killed some Polish people with a Soviet-era piece of artillery, not artillery or whatever, but like, you know what I'm saying, like a piece of Soviet-era technology. You don't see them saying anything about that. It's being inherently made negative against Russia. And even though Russia's in the wrong too, and they're in the wrong generally in this conflict, and I don't really feel bad for them, I think that people should report the facts of this as objectively as they can, you know what I mean? Like, where it was manufactured shouldn't matter as much as the fact 2 people were killed by a misfire from somebody, right? That's what counts. Anyway, with that being said, man, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel, follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at @SubToOptimus. Make sure to check out Shoptimus down below. Thank you to my Watch Optimus subscribers. Your support helps the channel tremendously. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus, well, talking about the update to this entire situation and signing out.